Back in the blistering summer of 2014, my own brother, Chris, left me stranded at a desolate Greyhound station in Detroit with nothing but a dead phone, a measly $30, and bruises etched deep into my ego. He was family, my hero even, yet he abandoned me without a second thought. Now, a decade later, he has the audacity to ask me to stand by his side as his best man at his wedding. The question haunts me. My name's Mark Anderson. I'm 28 now, but that summer, I was barely 19 and incredibly naive, stupid enough to trust my older brother, Chris. We'd always been inseparable. Growing up in Toledo, Ohio, our mom raised us alone after dad bailed, and Chris, with his quick wit and effortless charm, was always the funny guy, the one everyone liked, my undeniable hero. But that summer, the cracks in our bond had deepened. He dropped out of college, borrowed money from me, and never bothered to pay it back. When he casually asked if I'd drive up with him to Detroit, supposedly to clear his head, I said yes. I clung to a foolish hope that maybe, just maybe, we'd talk it out, that we'd somehow mend the growing rift and be brothers again. I never imagined that my desperate hope would lead to me ending up sleeping on a cold, metal bench, watching my breath fog up under the flickering, unforgiving streetlights of a Greyhound station. Chris had promised we'd crash at a friend's place, a lie I discovered too late, just another in a string of deceptions. The fight started innocently enough, over something as trivial as gas money, but it quickly spiraled, turning ugly, vicious. He hurled insults, each word a venomous dart aimed straight at my vulnerabilities. He called me a dead weight, snarled that I was always mom's perfect little charity case. I retaliated, calling him a freeloader, a liar, hitting back with words I knew would sting. In a fit of rage, he punched the dashboard, the sound cracking through the tense silence, and commanded me to get out. I stood there, stunned, thinking he was bluffing, that he'd never actually leave me. But when I stepped out of the car, needing to cool off, to clear my head from the noxious fumes of his anger, he slammed the door shut and drove off. He drove off with my bag, my wallet, everything. I stood there on the curb, watching his taillights disappear, disbelief warring with a rising panic. I tried calling, straight to voicemail, again and again, so I sat at the bus station, helpless, an hour bled into night. There were no buses until morning. My phone, my last lifeline, died around 2 a.m., leaving me completely cut off. I remember staring at the dirty ceiling, the fluorescent bulbs humming above me, the sterile air filling my lungs. I wondered if I'd ever forgive him for this. The next day, the betrayal worsened. I managed to find out my debit card had been completely emptied. Chris had used it for gas and beer, casually spending what little I had left. I was truly stranded, with only $30 in my pocket, and no one to prove who I was, to buy a ticket to prove my very existence. So I did the only thing Mom ever taught me when facing adversity: survive first. I slept sitting up, trying to appear nonchalant, pretending I was just waiting for a delayed bus. I begged the station clerk to let me charge my phone, a desperate plea for connection. It didn't matter. Chris never answered. 3 agonizing days later, dirty and exhausted, I resorted to hitchhiking home, swallowing my pride, relying on the kindness of strangers. When Mom, her face etched with worry, asked where Chris was, I lied. I said he'd stayed with friends, that he'd be home soon. Why did I protect him? Why did I cover for the person who had just abandoned and stolen from me? Maybe, deep down, a foolish persistent part of me wanted to believe he'd come home too, that he'd realize his mistake, that he'd say he was sorry. He didn't. He ghosted us both for 6 devastating months. During that time, while he lived his carefree life, I busted my ass. I enrolled in community college, juggling 2 demanding part-time jobs just to make ends meet, to build a new foundation for myself, brick by agonizing brick. Every now and then, I'd see his Facebook posts, blurry pictures of him drunk with random girls, flexing in crowded clubs, living a life of careless abandon. Not a single word to Mom, not a single word to me. We didn't talk again until Dad's funeral. Years later, he showed up late, smelling faintly of whiskey, his presence a jarring, disrespectful intrusion. He had the nerve to approach me, slurring, "We shouldn't fight today, bro." I looked him dead in the eye, my voice cold with a decade of resentment. I told him he'd lost the right to call me brother. He just laughed it off, his usual dismissive charm, and pulled me into a perfunctory hug, like nothing had ever happened between us. Mom always said, blood is blood. Her words were a constant echo, a silent plea for forgiveness I wasn't sure he deserved. And so, stupid me, I kept that door cracked open, just a sliver, a faint hope that he might someday step through it and truly apologize. 10 years later, just last month, actually, I received a text message that jolted me back to that Greyhound station. It was from Chris. The message was casual, audacious, and utterly devoid of any preamble or apology. "Yo, I'm getting married. You're my best man, bro. No excuses." I stared at that message for a full hour, the words burning into my retinas. A decade had passed, a decade of silence, no apology, no explanation for abandoning me, for emptying my card, for ghosting Mom. And now, out of the blue, he expected me to stand next to him, to hand him the ring, to deliver a heartfelt speech about loyalty and family values. My blood boiled. I ignored him, but the universe, it seems, wasn't done with its cruel jokes. His fiancée, Emily, called me. Her voice was sweet, earnest, oblivious. She said she didn't know the full story of what had happened between us, but Chris had told her I'm the only family he has left. She went on, detailing how he cries about me, how he regrets some fight we had when we were young. Some fight. The sheer audacity of his diluted narrative, the manipulation, made my stomach churn. She begged me to come, her voice filled with genuine hope, pleading that my presence would mean the world to him, that he'd truly changed. Part of me wanted to scream the truth, to warn her, to protect her from the man she was about to marry, but another part, a smaller, more vulnerable part, wondered if perhaps he had changed. Should I go? I called Mom, seeking her guidance, her unwavering perspective. She listened patiently, then offered her usual wisdom, wrapped in a familiar proverb. "Mark, sometimes you forgive people for yourself, not for them, but I don't know if I believe that. He left me like garbage on a curb. He stole from me. He never, not once, said sorry. And now, after a decade of silence, he wants my blessing. He wants me to be a prop in his carefully constructed new life." Here's the real kicker, the final, infuriating piece of the puzzle I uncovered. I found out why he suddenly needed me there. Turns out, he's deep in debt again, a familiar pattern. Emily's family, on the other hand, is loaded, old money, highly respected. He needs her dad's approval, not just for the marriage, but for a lucrative business business opportunity linked to the family. And her dad, a traditionalist, wants to see a strong family man standing by Chris' side. A brother who stands by him. I'm his cover story. His prop. His convenient, made-for-TV redemption arc. This wasn't about forgiveness or family. This was about money. Again, so I called him. My voice was steady, calm, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I told him I knew about Amelie's family, about the debt, about his game. He didn't deny it. He just laughed, a hollow, dismissive sound that grated on my nerves. Come on, bro, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Just show up, smile, be my best man. I'll pay you, pay me. The words hung in the air, a final, sickening insult. That's when I lost it. The control I'd maintained for a decade snapped. I told him what that bus station smelled like, the lingering scent of stale coffee and desperation. How my back hurt for weeks from sleeping on cold concrete. How mom cried herself to sleep for months after he ghosted us. I let all the suppressed pain, the anger, the raw resentment pour out. He didn't argue. He just hung up. The wedding is next week. A few days ago, the fancy invitation arrived in the mail. Thick white envelope, elegant gold lettering. Mark Anderson, best man. I stared at it for a full hour, the pristine card mocking me with its lie. Then, with a cold, clear resolve, I carried it to the kitchen sink. I lit a match, and watched it burn to ash, a cleansing fire. I sent Emily a message. I didn't tell her everything, didn't want to destroy her world just yet, just enough to say, I can't stand for him. I hope you see him for who he is, someday. Mom says I'm harsh, that I should have forgiven him, but maybe harsh is fair. Maybe this is what it means to truly put myself first. So, was I wrong to leave my brother standing alone at the altar, the very way he left me? Would you have done the same?